Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. Mr. Perry here with the rundown of what we're doing today. And today we're learning about the food chains and the food webs and the energy pyramids and how those are all supposed to work. So this is a follow-up to yesterday's activity where you piece them together yourselves. Today, we're going to go through what they actually are and look formally at what is involved with each one of them. So don't forget to do your bell ringer, and also don't forget to submit your food chains from around the world activity from yesterday. But with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right on into our stuff. So this is part 2 of our ecology notes, the food chains, webs, and pyramids. So first off, why we care about this stuff is because this is how energy is going to get transferred in the world. Each organism is in the ecosystem, and they fill a specific energy role to play a part and to make sure that all the animals and all the plants have the energy that they need to complete their daily functions. And we can lump those things into different categories. We've got things called producers, things called consumers, and then we've got the decomposers going on with that. And that's what we're going to take a look at today, and how those things interact within a food chain, food web, and energy pyramid. First and foremost, we have our producers. These are plants, basically, but sometimes it includes bacteria. They're also called autotrophs because they make their own energy. Troph means energy, auto means self, so they are self-energy makers. And they do that through using the sun and using photosynthesis to go about collecting up their energy and turning it into, gathering the sun's energy and turning it into their own energy that they can then use. So producers, they always start off with the food chain, the producers, because that's the where the original energy is going to be at, is from the sun. So they're the sun collectors, so they have to be first in our food chain. Decomposers are another kind of category. They're kind of the weirder side of things, because they take care of basically the recycling of nature. They break down the wastes and the dead organisms and return them back into the ecosystem. So primarily this is the role of the fungi, and some bacteria end up doing this as well as our primary examples. Normally we do not show decomposers on a food chain because they would be everywhere, because if anything has the possibilities of making waste or dying, a decomposer will be there to take care of the remains. So the decomposers are pretty much everywhere in our food chain, so we really don't add those to them. What we do add are consumers, which are things that need to eat in order to get their energy. They're also called heterotrophs because troph means energy, hetero means different, so they need something different for their energy. And there's a bunch of different types of consumers that we can look at. And you probably heard of most of them. We have things like herbivores, which are things that eat plants. We have carnivores, which only eat other animals. They eat the flesh and the meat part. They're meat eaters to it. We have omnivores, which can eat both plant and animal material. And then we have scavengers, which eat basically the dead stuff, or the carcasses and the leftovers, the garbage that is left behind. Those usually get taken care of by scavengers. Things like catfish will do that, vultures will do that. You have your scavenger category, which is different than the decomposers. Decomposers kind of recycle stuff. Scavengers eat the dead material to it. We've got the then food chain itself, how the food chain works. And basically it just shows who eats who and how that energy gets passed along. We start off with the producers. They're always first. They're the plants. Then we go into the primary consumers, which feed on the producer. Those are usually our herbivores or omnivores. We then have the secondary consumers, which feed on the primary. So those are usually your carnivores and omnivores. And then you have your tertiary, which are usually your top predators. And if there is a fourth level to the consumers, we call that the quaternary consumer. Essentially, it basically just means first, second, third, fourth. But they use the fancier way of saying first, second, third, fourth on there. If you combine a bunch of food chains together, you get what we call a food web. where you just show everything in the ecosystem and how it interacts with each other. And depending on what's special about this is that depending on the animal, if we were to look at the individual food chains that make it up, one animal could be found in multiple levels because they could be an omnivore and they could eat the plants, but they could also eat the insects that eat the plants. So they would be both considered a primary and secondary consumer. So the food web is kind of like in the next step up because it shows the different levels at which some of these things can exist at. We can then convert all of that into an energy pyramid to show how much energy actually gets used in the process and how much you get by being a primary, secondary, or tertiary consumer. Because whenever you eat, you get energy, and we use this energy to do all of our things that we do, from moving around, to growing, to reproducing, to basically any life activity that keeps us alive and well, we need energy in order to do that. Because every organism uses the energy, that means that when you eat them, you're not going to get 100% of them. And we have what is called the 10% rule, which says whenever you eat something, you're only getting about 10% of their energy because they have to use the rest of that 90% to do all of their life functions, just being able to live and survive in there. And we can lump that into a nice little energy pyramid because the different levels will show, as it gets smaller, how much energy goes away as we climb up higher and higher on the pyramid. Because as you increase your level in the pyramid, the less energy you're going to receive, which is why our food chains don't really grow all that long. Usually they're about 4 to 5 links long. That's because there's not going to be enough energy by the end of that food chain to make it worthwhile. So usually our food chains are a little bit shorter because of that. That's also why you find a lot more things at the producer level than you do as being the top predators. Because the producers have a lot more energy, they can grow and reproduce a lot quicker, whereas your apex predators, your top of the line predators that are at the very top of our food chain, there's not as many of those in the wild because they're not able to get as much energy as they need to be able to go about doing their whole reproductive manners there. So the more energy basically means that the more you have in your population, whereas the less energy you have, the less you have in your population. And that is it as far as our food chains, food webs, and energy pyramids go. A quick rundown of what's happening with that. You do have an assignment, so if you go to Schoology, open up our Wednesday folder, you'll see we have a food chains activity. Like all Schoology assignments, you have multiple attempts. So you'll usually have a picture involved with it that has either a food chain, food web, or an energy pyramid to it, and then there's questions to answer about each one of those. So make sure you read things carefully, though, because some of them do say, like, what are the 4 producers of this? So you got to make sure that you click on the 4 things that are there. Or what are 2 tertiary consumers? So you got to click on the 2 tertiary consumers. So some of them do have multiple checks that you need to do. So pay attention to the instructions so that you know how many you need to pick up on there. But yeah, and that's your homework assignment over our food chains and food webs. If you have any questions about anything, please let me know. Otherwise, I hope you're doing well, staying safe, and I will see you later. Bye.